postponed at the last minute, the deadline for Qatar to comply with the demands of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Members led by Saudi Arabia have agreed to the request by mediators from Kuwait to delay the date by 48 hours. But the bloc has also refused to forego its demands, leaving even close ally, the United States, confused.
The more the time goes by, the more doubt is raised about the actions taken by Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Qatar calls the demands unfair and illegal.
The problem of the Gulf countries was Iran. We don't have the same size of trade of Emirates or Saudi or the other countries. Qatar has been on the 5th ranked as trade partner from the Gulf countries, and Emirates is located the 2nd international trade partner for Iran. If the problem is Iran, why those measures being taken against Qatar and not being taken against Iran?
It was remarks attributed to the Qatari Emir allegedly praising the Saudis' regional rival that ignited the crisis. But experts say the ferocity of the GCC's reaction is because they see Doha's pursuit of an independent foreign policy as a provocation.
They have their own also little reasons. The Saudis, they want to see Qatar under their fold because everybody else is under the Saudi fold.
Qatar insists that will not happen, but it's increasingly looking isolated as Saudi Arabia holds the strongest cards in the dispute. It has closed down Doha's only land border and restricted airspace for flights to and from Qatar. And now it is moving to freeze Qatar's assets in regional banks and investment firms. That's a move that could checkmate the country's defenses. Shoaib Hassan, the Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from Riyadh by Saudi and Gulf Affairs analyst Mohammed Al-Qubayban. In London, we have Sultan Barakat. He's the founding director of the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies at the Doha Institute. And with me here in the studio is TRT World's editor-at-large, Ahmed Al-Burai. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Mohammed Al-Qubayban, the fact that there has been an extension suggests that Saudi and the GCC are rethinking this blockade, rethinking their demands, and maybe there'll be some sort of compromise. Is that how you see it?
No, I'm optimistic anyhow. I think the effort being done around the world, especially from the Kuwaitis, Sheikh Sabah, I think, and understanding also the Qataris problem after this few days again, I think that I'm optimistic and problem will be solved. The 48 hours being asked from the Kuwaitis or by the Qataris extension to read more and sit up and think, well, it gives you an indication. 48 hours, what has to do? I mean, we're not going to exam or we're not giving somebody a chance to fix his behavior. No, those are governments and the crisis is bigger than 48 hours. But what my thinking about that the Qataris will have to go sooner or later with the demands that the GCC countries, the 3 countries and Egypt ask. And you knew, sir, there is some, I think, update events happening last night. You knew that Mr. Trump was talking directly to the phone to Prince Tamim. And I think that call will have a lot of things inside it. There will be lots of changes. But again, I'm not feeling that it will be continue like this. I'm really feeling optimistic that the Qataris will understand.
Okay, so Sultan Barakat, Mohammed Al-Qubayban is optimistic that the Qataris will eventually cave in, I guess. He has a cautious optimism. The Qataris have always said those 13 demands were designed to be rejected because it went too far. What do you think?
Well, I think, I mean, I agree with millions around the world who think the whole process has been totally irrational, right from day one, to spring out a blockade of that magnitude on a neighboring country, a country that is a member of the GCC, was really out of this world. And I think it came as a shock to a lot of policy observers and analysts around the world. Having said that, I think the 48-hour extension does give some positive signals. on both sides. First, it shows that the Saudi and the Emiratis have a degree of flexibility, and they are willing to wait and listen to what Qatar has to say. And it also shows that the Qataris have not rejected entirely the 13 demands, but they are maybe working on some kind of more detailed response to emerge in the coming couple of days.
Ahmed Al-Buraid, there's been an upsurge in nationalism within Qatar, images of the Emir, Tamim, the country itself being very strong, doubling down on its rejection of those demands. Qatar is a small country, but a rich country, and it has some friends. But does it have as many friends as it thinks it has in order to continue to push back against these demands from the GCC and the Saudis, or is it playing dangerously?
The absurdity or the lunacy of the whole crisis went viral on the Twitter and social media outlets. If you just go and see how the Saudis are portraying what's going to happen in Qatar, liberating Qatar is one of the hashtags. The other hashtag is it's approaching Qatar, be careful. One of the very prominent journalists in Saudi Arabia, who is very close to the royal family, is saying, I wish they decline the whole list so they will see what is the consequence. So Qatar absolutely is a very small country, but it does have the soft power in the region. They do have great relations with Turkey. From the one hand, the move of Turkey by deploying the military and their soldiers in Qatar in the military base was a checkmate move, if you will, to the whole region, that Turkey is not going to concede or abandon its relations with Qatar. But on the other hand, what's happening now, I disagree with the point that we should be cautiously optimistic, because its deadlines never work in negotiation and peaceful. If they have the will, the political will to negotiate the 13 items, they wouldn't give extension for 48 hours.
Mohammed Al-Qubayban, why give deadlines? Why give ultimatums? Why not talk directly to the Qataris and its friends or middlemen, whether it's the Kuwaitis, whether it's Turkey? Why not talk on equal terms instead of throwing down these deadlines and ultimatums and then extending them? Why not have proper dialogue?
Wallahi, sir, I just want to tell you, maybe the two gentlemen here, I don't see them, but anyway, good evening to both of them, Barakat and Ahmed. I think they did not read the problem since 1996. If we're talking about hysterical, Barakat was saying this is irrational demand, and Ahmed, he said very valid point that the Qataris has to use their soft power. And why we don't talk directly, I think, sir, the problem is being on the table the minute as let's say the Arab Spring started and the Al Jazeera start broadcasting by negative way, rather than to show the whole world this is the Arabs are moving forward and they want to shift their lives, they took it from the different side. And here is the problem start. The Saudis talk directly. I've been in Qatar 100 times. We discuss these issues with our friends, and coming to the governments, they've been discussing it. So the problem is not 1 year or 2 years. No, I'm saying it's beginning of 1996. The problem started. When Al Jazeera start picky at the problems. A small problem in Saudi, they make it a hill. Small problem in Kuwait, especially the Arab neighboring country.
I'm interested because you mentioned Al Jazeera twice now. No, it's interesting, sir. You mentioned Al Jazeera twice. And just in the interest of clarity, are you talking about Jazeera as an entire network? Are you talking about Al Jazeera Arabic as a channel? Are you talking about Mubashir, Al Jazeera English? Which one in particular? And is it because of Al Jazeera and its policies to GCC countries, or Al Jazeera and its general coverage?
No, sir. No. Please don't misread me this way.
I'm
saying this is the problem start.
Sure.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah. I'm talking about Al Jazeera Arabic and Al Jazeera English, and I'm talking about Mubashir.
Okay.
So I'm not talking about as a channel itself. No, I'm talking about as a system. This is none in our society being happens. We're different than the Western people. Yes, you may say something to the governments, but our Islamic rules is we have to respect. We've been directed to respect whoever is in the bus. So Al Jazeera did not read.
Sure. Allow me to come in here. I worked for Al Jazeera for about 10 years. I never once got an edict or a mandate to go and hurt the Saudis, to hurt the Emiratis, to try and make them look bad. My mandate, mainly at Al Jazeera English, was to be a good journalist and try and do the best I could. We were never in there to manipulate anything against the GCC countries. We were never aware of some sort of system designed to push back against that. Was I just naive?
I hope, yeah, sir, maybe you're talking about the English, but I was watching the English too.
Okay. But you
I
said
think
the English,
that
you
was
said the English and the Arabic.
Yeah, I'm saying all. If we look at the news, we don't want to go back and just debate in something almost 15 years ago. No, but this is the reality. What I'm saying is a small problem. They are making it a bigger problem. Not the idea of passing the information to the viewers. No, is behind it. I've read it. Many people read it. That
but
they are
do that
trying to push the
government
population.
In Venezuela, they do that about the government in Turkey. They do it about every country because news follows problems, right? Should they only report on everybody else's problems and not your problems?
No, that's not true. They do it in other countries. I mean, what we give a damn, sorry for this, why we care about what's happening there in Venezuela. If it's a problem that there is a problem, it's nice to know. But the problem was from Al Jazeera and other, let's say, media belong to a Qatar government. They were trying to give a wrong, let's say, image and forcing people to create, to start moving around the governments, trying to push people, which is they are driving to a chaos.
Okay.
That's how I read it.
Okay.
That's
okay.
what most people read
and I think, and to be fair to you, you reflect a sentiment that's across the GCC at the moment. Sultan Barakat, you wanted to come in.
Yes, I actually agree that the issue goes back to 1995, and not even 1996. And it is when Qatar made a conscious decision to break away from the satellite of Saudi Arabia. Qatar has been under the thumb of Saudi Arabia for many decades before then, ever since the British left the Gulf. And they have reached a conclusion that their own development is better served by forcing their way out and by forging a new independent foreign policy, which they have done rather successfully. And they have also developed their own economics. Their dependence on liquefied gas have allowed them to break away from pipelines and deliveries and so on. So you could see from the Saudi perspective that is very annoying, and I understand that. But from a Qatari perspective, it is what have driven their development at an incredible speed ever since 1995. People still live around and they can remember the days before 1995 when the country was in debt, and now when it has hundreds of billions of dollars in assets that allows it to cope with this blockade and other circumstances. So I think we have to be very rational about their own choice. Now they've made the choice and they moved that way. Now Al Jazeera for me is just a tool. Al Jazeera, originally the whole idea of Al Jazeera and an English news channel, an Arabic news channel that was made to imitate CNN in those days, was meant to be a Saudi-British enterprise, and that failed, and then Qatar moved in and they took on Al Jazeera. Now, I don't think we can blame everything on what Al Jazeera has done or doing, although I do agree that during the Arab Spring, particularly Al Jazeera Arabic, I think went a little bit off tangent. They became very emotive. The reporting had some problems with it and so on. But overall, this is a media outlet where we have a new culture in the world, we have a new culture in the region that allows freedom of speech. The Saudis and the Emiratis and others have also established their own outlets. They have tried to compete with Al Jazeera. They are continuing to compete with Al Jazeera. I think they are legitimate to do so. They can edit their own programs, do their own presentations, so on. The problem, I think, is in the sources of making the news. I mean, we have to be very honest that some countries in the region have really resisted any degree of reform. And it is this what makes the news and what gives rise to Al Jazeera reporting.
Yeah, and that's one of the arguments of the Qataris. Yes, of course. And of course, those who defend freedom of the media say, yeah, all media is flawed, including Al Jazeera, but if you're going to shut them all down, if you're going to shut down media for being flawed, you're going to shut down, well, most of them, I guess. Ahmed Al-Burai, just before we end, I've got a couple more questions, so briefly, please. So are we seeing the emergence of two camps here? On the one hand, you have the Qataris and Turkey and maybe the Iranians, maybe even the Russians on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have the Saudi, GCC countries, Egypt, maybe the Americans. The Americans are wavering a little bit as well. Are we seeing two camps develop?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a kind of polarization, and it's very clear. The manifestations are very clear. Now you have Turkey from the one hand. You're pushing Qatar by a way or another, the same as you did to Hamas, to leave or to depart from the Sunni orbit, if you will, and move to the Shiite orbit, to Iran, mainly because the Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis are not able to embrace Qatar. Qatar is not that kind of a rogue state that is completely disagreeing with all the policies. Right. They've been the allies in Yemen. They've been the allies in Syria. They have much in common. But the problem is these two countries are by far pushing them. They want them to be a vassal state by the literal meaning of the word.
Okay. Now I want one final question for Mohammed Al-Qubayban, because he's the one guest, in the Saudi camp here. Mohammed, would you be happy if the Emir, Sheikh Tamim, was overthrown and Saudi tanks rolled across the border and there was regime change in Qatar? Would you be happy?
Of course not, sir. What you're saying, I mean, that's non-rational question, by the way, or non-rational point.
No, many Saudis are calling for it, so I'm asking whether you're calling for it as well.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm telling you, we're almost one house, and we have different ideas. We're not maybe agreeing with the policies that they are doing, but they are still, we're tribes. Maybe you've been, as you said, in Qatar, so you saw the Saudis. And by the way, most of the national Saudis people, they're still okay with each other, but this is a government problem. But what I want to say, we never push the Qataris government toward the borders or to push them to the corner to give decisions that we want. I completely disagree with Mr. Ahmed, what he was talking about. Sir, Qatar is not a country from 100 years or 200 years. They are neighboring us. No, that's more than 300 years, and they are tribes. So we know Qatar before, maybe during the Ottomanese Empire, empire. But the problem is, the unfortunate things happen that Sheikh Tamim, to me, how I read it, he's not the one who is running the government. There is somebody is running the government behind him by force, by friendly.
Who is
that?
That?
From the royal family. Yeah, from the family. His dad, by the way, and the, let's say, foreign ministers, Sheikh, I think, Hamad, and other members.
Okay.
And the problem is that the Qataris thought that though they are with us in Al-Hazm, Asifat Al-Hazm in Yemen, in Syria, that they thought this will let the Egypt, Saudi, Bahrain, and Emirates will never look at what other problems they're doing.
Okay.
As we're saying, intervening in these inside policies, supporting Muslim brothers being requested by the Egypt government.
Right.
So lots of
okay, and those
issues
are the 30
here.
demands.
Maybe the program was...
Okay, and those are the 30 demands.
But what I'm saying, the program is not enough. I hope that we find sometimes later, and I hope the broadcast will be live. Then at least I see you and I see my friends there. It will be more exciting.
Okay, we'd love to have you in studio sometime.
Thank you very much to you.
Okay, we're gonna give you a call. Hopefully we'll have you in studio sometime soon. It's good to have you on the program again, Mohammed Al-Qubayban, Sultan Barakat, and Ahmed Al-Burai. Thank you.